All right, welcome to the accountability call for May the 2nd. I am so excited to be starting a brand new month. Every single month, I feel like you get, not that you can't adopt this mindset every single week or whatever, or every single moment or every single hour, meal, whatever, that every time is a new time to choose a healthier behavior. But I do think whether you mean for it to or not, just like at the top of a year, the top of a month feels like a really good time to refresh, to evaluate what worked well last month, what we need to change for this month, and how we can keep going. And so I love the first of a month. I love a Monday. I feel like it's funny when I don't know, before I started all of what I do with coaching and Beachbody and all of that, I used to dread Mondays. And now I feel like Mondays are my most productive, best days of the week. I get so hype and excited on a Monday. And I need that refreshment probably around Thursday timeframe. That's where the energy starts slagging and I have to really lean in hard to the accountability group and really have to focus my attention on, hello, Danielle, do not get off track. But Mondays, for some reason, are just the best days to me. So very, very excited that we are at the top of a Monday. This month's theme is mindset and mental health. So if you have not already logged into the accountability group, please go log into that immediately. Every single night, there's an accountability post that goes up. You need to be making sure that you put your accountability in that post. There are instructions in the caption, so just follow the instructions. It's pretty easy. And I'll just, as a generalized reminder, whether you're brand new to this accountability group, this boot camp, whatever you want to call it, or you've been doing this for 2 years. I have ladies in there who've been in there 2 and 3 years, and it's because they know the power of accountability. The accountability post every single night seems like the thing you don't need to do. But I remember a long time ago, I read a book by Jeff Olson called The Slight Edge. And there was a quote in that book that I still return to all the time. And what he said, what the gist of it, I'm sure I'm not going to be able to quote the exact thing, was the things that are the easiest not to do are the things you need to do the most. So, and that has stuck with me in business. It's stuck with me in my health journey. It stuck with me in my marriage, parenting, all the things. The things that seem so easy, like they don't matter, those things are the things that compound together that matter the absolute most. And accountability group stuff falls into that. So set yourself an alarm. That's one of the things I encourage people to do. If you struggle with remembering to log in, for me, 9 o'clock, I almost always have my kids in bed by 9 and are, I'm starting to decompress from my day, cleaning the kitchen, whatever. I have an alarm that goes off on my phone every single night. And it has for 7 straight years that says log accountability. Some nights I've already done it. So I just swipe and go whatever. Some nights I roll my eyes and I'm like, I do not need this reminder. I'll do it in a minute. And some nights that is the only thing that kept me from like falling asleep on the couch and not posting. So it is vitally important that you do that. It's how I can best coach you. And it's how you can really learn how to day by day tweak and adjust what you're eating, what you're doing that are going to give you the results. The thing that I run into with most new people is they want to know everything all at once. And while I could fire hydrant hose you all at once and give you every single, don't eat this, yes, eat this, eat exactly this much of this and that, and don't eat that much of that, make sure you're drinking this and not drinking this, and we can go over all of that. But what happens is you get fire hydrant blasted in the face and you don't remember any of it. And so the nightly accountability is where I can piecemeal that into your life where it starts to make sense on a real-time basis. So be sure that you're in there, celebrate your wins in there. That group is a community. It is not the Danielle show. So I want you to post in there your photos, your meals, challenge people to a water drink off kind of thing. If you're struggling with water, get in that group and encourage other people too. I found so much value in not just being a fly on the wall in a group, but really getting in the middle of the bed, really like not just letting the coach run the show, but get in there. You're never stepping on my toes. I think some people are like, well, I don't want to step on your toes. No, It's not. I want a community. That's the way this runs best. So if this is brand new to you, be sure that you're doing that. If you are watching the recording of this, or you're in here live and that's something that you've kind of been like, oh, well, I guess it's not that important, just know it is vitally, vitally important. So, okay, like I mentioned, May's theme is mindset and mental health. And if you have followed my social for very long, if you've been in any of my groups, you know that I emphasize the mindset portion of what we do and the mental health portion of what we do over almost everything else. I wrote a book several years ago. Well, not several years ago, last year. And one of the things that I talked about in there, and there's even a fun little meme that I've seen floating around the internet. It's like, you can drink all the smoothies you want, and you can do all the sit-ups you want, and you can eat all the kale that you want. But if you don't fix what's going on in your head, you are never going to be healthy. You are never going to be able to be truly everything you're able to be. And so I will never dismiss the necessity for mental health care. So if you need to go to a therapist, go to a therapist. If you need to be on meds, get yourself some meds. Like, do what you need to do to take care of your mental health from a medical standpoint, but do not dismiss the power that you have over your mind with exercise and what you eat. I think it is the number one thing that is the most underutilized, for lack of a better word, medication for mental health issues, whether that's anxiety, depression, anything like that. I mean, really and truly, you have so much control over the day to day. You just have to exercise it. And I know when you are in the thick of it and when you are drowning, that feels like the furthest thing you could possibly think of to be able to do. And I honor that and I recognize that. But if all you can do is get up out of your bed, make your bed, and don't get back in it, then let that be the start. If all you can do is eat one more vegetable today than you did yesterday, then let that be a start. Because studies have shown over and over and over things like, excessive added sugars and preservatives and things in your food. Not only do they slow down your digestion and your gut health, but they also slow down your brain, and they make your brain not able to function at its highest capacity. And so making sure to eat as many whole foods as you possibly can. Excellent. Drinking your Shakeology every day. Excellent. It's got adaptogens and herbs in it. Ashwagandha is in Shakeology, which if you've looked at any like functional medicine or anything like that, they tout the benefits of ashwagandha like nobody's business. And that is because it is an all natural mood enhancer. It literally lifts your mood and helps you to have more mental energy, and not from caffeine, not from a stimulant or anything like that, but real whole food nutrition. And so, I think a lot of people, they look at Shakeology and they think, oh, well, it's a meal replacement, so I can lose weight. I will drink it till the day I die because it helps me not want to murder my children. So, which sounds terrible, but let's be real here. We're just going to get on the real level. That is the truth of the matter. So today's topic, like I said, I say this every time, but I'll reiterate it again today. We have 3 parts of our Monday accountability call. The very first part of that call is a check-in. We do what are your wins from the week, that sort of thing. The middle is the content. So we're going to talk a little bit about mindset and mental health. And then I'm going to talk about a practical thing that you can do to kind of amp up your nutrition. And then the end, I'll turn off the recording and we'll do a quick little Q&A, whether that's specific personal questions to you or generalized questions for whoever is live on the call. So like I said, this month is mental health and mindset. And one of the things that I don't know that I talk about it a ton, but back in 2020, 2021, I spent the pandemic getting a mindset certification. So I was certified in NLP practices, which is neuro-linguistic programming. And so I wanted to share a little bit about neuro-linguistic programming today and kind of how you can use that to your advantage and how you can start resetting some of those old stories that you've been carrying around forever and ever, and start to reframe those in a way that benefit you and move you forward. So the layman's terms for neurolinguistic programming is that we all have a conscious mind, a subconscious mind, and an unconscious mind. So unconscious mind is when you're sleeping. That is when you are literally not coherent whatsoever. Your subconscious mind is the things that you've heard your whole life that aren't actively in the forefront of your mind, but they very much make up the decisions that you make and why you make them. And then your conscious mind is, what you're actively thinking in this moment. So Vicky is making dinner while we're on this call and while we're talking. And so she's actively listening. I can tell she nods her head and she's actively listening. But what her subconscious mind, what's going on back there, might be stirring the pot, might be, monitoring the background noise. If there were kids or a husband running around, if she heard a big loud thud, that is outside of the norm of her, like almost white noise in the background. Like it's there, you just really aren't paying attention to it. And so neurolinguistic programming really deals with the subconscious mind. What are those stories that you're probably not even aware of that impact your everyday decision making? And so I can't speak for everybody's subconscious stories. Literally every single person has a set of subconscious stories that roll through their mind. And really, a lot of people don't recognize how much of an impact they make until you start to become a little more aware of them and bring them into that forefront of your mind. And so I feel like that NLP training that I did, what it really helped me do was start identifying both in myself and in my clients what I hear in the background of what you're telling me. So, for example, let me think here. This is a silly example, but I'll give this example. I'm not a good dancer unless I'm drunk. There you go. Somebody, I'm sure at some point in my life told me I was not a good dancer. And usually just, a little bit of background education on your subconscious thought patterns. The majority of those are solidified in your mind between the ages of 7 and 12. So if somewhere between the ages of 7 and 12, somebody you even moderately cared about told you you're not a good dancer, that might be stuck in the back. And then to stack on top of that thought, you go to college, right? You have a little too many drinks, you're dancing and you feel real good. And you got a guy coming up on you and he's dancing and he's like, man, you're a good dancer. And all of a sudden those two thoughts are linked. I am a good dancer with alcohol. I am not a good dancer without alcohol. Again, this is very base level story here. There's lots of deeper, iceberg kind of things. But is that true? So the main premise of starting to look at the stories that roll through the background is that true? Is it true that I am only a good dancer? Maybe yes, maybe, or with alcohol, maybe yes, maybe no. It's not really, the point of that question isn't to judge the truthfulness of it. It's to get to the next question, right? Who said that? And you're like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't really remember. So is it really true? You start investigating and deconstructing these stories that you have in the back of your mind, and you start to be able to make new stories that serve you much better. And so whether I am only a good dancer when I drink or not, I don't know. I still hold that that's a true story, and we're going to stick to that because I'm not going to be on Dancing with the Stars anytime soon. But I can start to recognize that those types of stories that roll in the background can present themselves in very ugly ways. Again, that was a silly story, but maybe things, lots of women that I speak to have things like, well, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not pretty enough. Or one of the ones that for me was the background in my head, again, I'm sure it was installed between the ages of 7 and 12, that I am a pretty girl if I could just lose some more weight. I very much remember having a grandmother, God rest her soul, who said that to me. I remember the exact situation. You are such a beautiful girl, Danielle. You have such a beautiful face. If you could, and then she looks at my belly, if you could just lose a little weight. And yes, that's a hurtful story. That's something that I've carried with me throughout my life. But what it is something, and I think a lot of us think that we can't ever change those stories. But the reality is, through intentional pulling up from under the surface and pulling them out into the light, we can start to deconstruct those stories and really look at them for what they are. Because what they are was a grandmother that did love me very much and was concerned for me. And I can now, at 37, look back and almost have sympathy or pity on that situation. I'm sure maybe she was teased as a young girl for her weight, and she did not want me to feel that way. So that was the news story that she passed along, those generational stories that sat in the background of our mind. And I'm not going to hate her. I'm not going to look, think, oh, you were such a bad grandma, nothing like that. But I have to understand that when I look in the mirror, or I look at a picture, that is often the subconscious thought that comes to the surface. And so what we have to do, again, is start to deconstruct that. So, there's several questions that I usually have my mindset coaching clients answer. And you can translate this literally into any story, or what we call limiting belief, anywhere where you want to change that story. So maybe it's with your kids, or maybe it's something that, if I lift heavy weights, I'm going to look bulky like a man. Maybe it's, I had a client recently who told me, well, I can't lose weight if I eat carbs. So the question is, right? Like, okay, I know that's not true, but in her head, that is very much true. And she will continue to tell herself that story, and it will continue to prove itself true, because what happens is we start to self-perpetuate those stories. We start to self-sabotage, and we start to make those stories reality, even if they were never reality to begin with. So the first question we always ask is it true? And then, yes or no, who said that? And a lot of times what you will find, what I did not like about what I found, was nobody actually said a lot of the things to me. A lot of it was me telling myself that from perceptions that I thought other people were saying about me. They weren't real, actual things. I took someone's side glance to mean, oh, well, she's pretty, but her weight or whatever, I interpreted all these things. And so it's really important that you identify who is it that said that. And then you want to, what is the opposite of that? Or what is the statement that would be empowering? So like the statement for me in the not so silly story that I've worked on a lot is that I'm beautiful because I was created in the image of God. No matter what my body looks like, no matter if I'm big or small or tall or skinny or what, it doesn't matter. I was made in the image of God, and that is the truth. And so then you start building a library of evidence. I look at it like almost like a law practice, right? When you go into a court case, I'm watching Inventing Anna right now. So kind of a side story, I know. And they back up this trailer full of these boxes and boxes and boxes of evidence. Well, when you have a rotten story in your head, you have, through the last 20, 30 years, stacked up evidence that proves that rotten story true. So unfortunately, you're going to have to do some real legwork to prove your new story true. But what I usually have people start with is, give me 3 pieces of evidence that your new story is true. And sometimes that's hard for people because, I worked with a client one time and she said, I literally have never, ever, ever felt worthy enough for love. Never in my whole life. And I'm like, okay. And I'm trying to help her dig and help her find evidence. What about from your father? Oh my gosh, no, he left when we were 2. I just immediately decided he didn't love me, And so it's like, oh, wow, okay, so we need to build a whole new library of evidence. And so now you're going to search daily for evidence that that new story is true. So going back to the grandma story, I've got to start building some evidence that my new story, that, I was created in the image of God, therefore I am beautiful, is true. So one of the pieces of evidence that I put in my file folder of evidence was my husband fell in love with me at the biggest I ever was. The biggest I ever was. He didn't give a shit about what size I was. And I was like, wow, okay. And then we go to scripture because, me who loves Jesus very much is going to find her truth in scripture. And so Jesus says that I was knitted in my mother's womb and that I was made by him, a creator in his image. That's pretty convincing evidence right there. And then again, I usually try to get people to get 3 pieces of evidence that they can write down and physically have in front of them, because just because you prove that new thought true in 3 instances doesn't mean you're never going to combat against that story again. I'm gonna walk into a dressing room and I'm going to try on a dress that was way too small and I didn't ever need to pick it up to begin with. It looks ridiculous. And that old story is going to come back to haunt me. And so I've got to have those things right at the conscious level of my mind. And so we start making sure that we're adding and stacking onto that evidence. And I know a lot of people don't like to journal. I have worked with hundreds of women throughout the last 7 years, and I get a lot of eye rolls at journaling. But I will tell you, there is a very big scientific link between writing something down and remembering it in your head. And so if you can just grab a little journal in your bedside table and start writing down, like I had an exercise that I did with my team 2 years ago when I was doing this training, where I had them every single day for a whole month write down this, they had a question or whatever, their question. And it's like, what's your limiting belief of the day? You wake up and what's the thing that is going to knock you off your horse immediately in the day? We're going to attack that one. And sometimes every single day it'll be the same one. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. Nobody wants to join my team. I'm never going to lose this weight, whatever, right? So we attack that every single day. And the monumental leaps that those women saw in those 30 days was incredible. The success that they had with their weight loss journeys, or whatever it was that they came to the table needing. Not all of them needed to lose weight. Some wanted to do better in their business. Some wanted to, whatever. But they were able to really start deconstructing some of those old patterns. And the habit of doing that every single day, like we were talking about at the beginning, it's the easiest thing not to do. Because do I want to sit around and journal for 2 minutes every morning? No, I do not. I want to go make coffee and drink my Energize and get ready for my day. I don't want to sit around and journal. But the habit of doing that started to compound and compound and compound. And then you were able to see, looking back over the month, how you were able to reset some of those long ingrained yucky stories. I call them rotten stories, that start to stink up the place, and sometimes you got to get them out and you got to keep flushing the air, sort of thing. But it really does. It's incredible the way you are capable of changing your long held beliefs about yourself. That was one thing that I really struggled with, that I find a lot of women don't recognize that they struggle with it. Like on the surface, they would be like, no, I don't think that. But then they start chewing on it for a while and they're like, oh gosh, yeah, no, I really do believe that. My belief pattern, and again, I'm sure I heard it between the ages of 7 and 12, is that people don't change. I remember I had a really abusive birth father, and my mom repeated that saying all the time. People don't change. He's a manipulator. So, he might act like he changed, but deep down, he never changed. And again, I understand why that was something that she said, and might definitely agree with her assertion of the situation. But what that instilled in my head was that I can't change. I'm a person. If people can't change, then neither can I. So why do I need to really worry about it? If I can't change anyway, what's the point of all of this struggling? Screw it. I don't need to worry about it. I'll drink and eat and sit on my lazy bum, and it won't really matter because people don't change. But what I found was from actively combating those thought patterns, people actually can change. And there's been so much research done in neuropsychology in the last probably 15 to 20 years that has proven that unequivocally not true. People can change. You actually can change your brain neurons to fire in new ways. You can physically change the chemistry makeup of your brain intentionally, and it is not easy, but you have to do it every day. But you actually can change. And so one of the things that they talk about is mirror neurons. So one of the cool things about our brains is that we can, our neurons can mirror what we see in other people. So you find a good kind of a silly example of this is, say you don't cuss. You're not a cussing kind of girl or whatever, but all of a sudden you start hanging out with your new neighbor. She moved in and she drops the F-bomb every other word. She's just F, 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 F. It won't happen immediately. Immediately, you might be like, whoa, Linda, what are you doing over there? Potty mouth much? Like, watch my kids' ears, please. But 2-3 weeks, a month, 2 months, 6 months, you're hanging out in Linda's living room, and all of a sudden you find yourself going F, 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 a little more down the road, F, F, F. And so you start to mimic what the people around you are doing. And that's one of the mirror neuron things that happens. And so that's why I make such a strong case for surrounding yourself with people that have neurons that you want to mimic. Because if you're surrounding yourself with people that have habits and neurological pathways that you do not want to be mimicking, you have to fight extra hard not to do it. Well, our brains are made up to be pretty lazy, honestly. We look for automations. Our brains constantly want to automate systems, right? Like, this is, again, lots of silly examples in this call, but one of my silly things is every time I get out of the car, I just have tried to make it a habit that I grab something that needs to go into the house. We have a junky car, my kids junk it up, I junk it up. And that has become something I don't even think about anymore. My brain has automated that. I just grab some, half time I don't even know what I grabbed. I just grab something. It could belong in the car. I don't know, but I grab it and I take it inside because it's laying right there. And so our brains are lazy in that way. They constantly want to automate so that they are more efficient and can use energy on new things. And so if you are not careful, the neurons that you're around, we'll call them neurons, not morons, neurons that you're around, you start mimicking them. And so you do have to be a little diligent, especially in the early days of changing habits and resetting patterns and forging new neural pathways, that you are surrounding yourself with people that you want to emulate, not ones that you have to constantly fight against. And we can talk about, later on in another call, because I know there's a lot to unpack with all of that. And we have all months calls to talk more about mindset and mental health and all of that. But one of the things that I do want you guys to do for homework is to start making a little list of stories that have come up that you've noticed, especially when starting a healthy lifestyle. The things that, and again, this is it's so silly, but I hung out with a friend of mine on Friday night. There was a movie at my kids' school and it was raining, and it was chilly for Hawaii. So meaning it was 68, right? And rainy. And she said, "Oh, I'm going to catch a cold." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, that's not a thing." And she was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, it is. I have always heard that. If you sit out in the cold rain, you're going to catch a cold." And I was like, "Well, all right, if you say so." We both sat out at exactly the same time. Guess who had the sniffles on Sunday morning at church? And guess who does not? And I firmly believe it's because it's the power of what you think, not the power of, because scientifically you can research it. There is no science that backs up rain and being in the rain and catching a cold. You catch a cold because of germs. And while you can lower your immune system by being cold and whatever, you did not catch a cold because you sat in the rain. But you can actually will yourself into being sick and screw with your mindset enough that you can make yourself sick. And so I believe there's so much power in our mind and how we continue to repeat the same stories over and over. And I also, if that is true, it's like one of those SAT questions, right? Like if that is true, then so is the other. If we can change, if we can manipulate our mind to the negative, guess what we can also do? That means that we can also manipulate it to the positive. And so that, I feel like, is one of the strongest things that we can do as we enter our health and wellness journey, is to really start solidifying new stories that are empowering to you, that remind you that actually, yeah, no, I can. Just because somebody one time told me that after 40, you gain a spare tire and it never goes away. That's not true. I know lots of 40-year-olds that are way hot, like super hot. And they, you know, they've done with their bodies what they want to do. It's up to you what you want to believe. You know, so that's your homework for the week, is to kind of start identifying some of those stories, pulling them out of your subconscious, and whether that's just jotting them down on a piece of paper or putting them in a note on your phone. You don't have to attack them yet unless you're ready for that. But I will say, starting to become conscious of them is step one, because most people walk around every day and have no idea that those stories are even in the background. So it's just start to be conscious of those. And then our practical tip of the day is, I think I want to talk about adding veggies into your meals that don't typically have veggies. So a lot of times people are like, oh my God, Danielle, every single night you look at my accountability post and you say, more veggies, more veggies, more veggies. First of all, yep, sorry, that's what you're going to hear from me. And it's not because I secretly just want the whole world to be vegetarians, because I don't. We like meat in our house. But what I do know is that veggies are incredibly nutrient dense. Oftentimes vegetables are lower in calories, which means they're not going to stack up in your macros real heavy, and they're incredibly filling. And so if you can keep the bulk of your, especially your dinner and lunch meals, vegetable based, a lot of times your intention, or you're accidentally lowering your calories, keeping yourself full and filling nutritional gaps. So one of the ways I've done that is things like spaghetti sauce, stuff like that. I will saute up some carrots and mushrooms and zucchini and stuff like that, and then I'll throw it into the blender with a can or a jar of spaghetti sauce, and then I'll serve that on top of stuff. Ground meat, whether that's in burgers or meatballs, or last night my kids had nachos. Guess what was in their nacho meat that they had no idea about? Carrots and mushrooms. And if Davin knew there were mushrooms in there, he would have died. Oh, I don't like mushrooms, they're yucky. But I'm like, well, you eat mushrooms all the time, you just have no idea. So they oftentimes will saute up in ground meat. You just put them right in there with your beef, or last night we had bison, or ground turkey. Just saute it all up in there together, season it really well. They'll never know the difference. And then, you know, obviously you can add spinach and frozen cauliflower and frozen zucchini into smoothies, and it is taste free. So I use frozen cauliflower in my shakes a lot, because it kind of makes it a little bit fluffier without adding any flavor at all. But it's another way to get in an extra serving of vegetables. Ideally, if you are between the weights of like 170-ish to like 220-ish pounds, you need to be having between 6 and 8 servings of vegetables a day, which most people are like, holy cow. It's cups. So like if you really actually measured what you were eating, oftentimes you're eating more than you think you are anyway, especially if you have larger, you know, whether that's cauliflower or broccoli or some of the like larger physical volume of stuff. You know, 2 cups of broccoli is not a ton like you think it is, but it's really not. And so yeah, 6 to 8 cups of veggies a day will really help you kind of start seeing some of those results that you want to be seeing. So all right, my friends, we're going to stop the recording